Hello and welcome back to World Reviews and More. Today we're going to be taking another look at some more episodes from the series that's on the WWE Network, the Monday Night War. Really enjoying this series so far. I've watched 5, well, before this video I'd watched 5, and now I'm going to review episodes 6, 7, 8 and 9. And just give my thoughts on them. Like I said, same old story really. I'm not going to give too much away. Just going to give some thoughts so then you guys can make up your mind if you've not already watched them, whether you want to watch them or not. Just going to give you some pros and cons basically. This is going to be my first review of the night. Obviously it's Fastlane tonight. I'll be watching that. My mother has very kindly taken my daughter for the night to babysit so I can stay up and watch Fastlane, and then I'll be doing my review at some point after that. Anyway, back to the Monday Night War series. So as I mentioned in the previous videos, there's 2 of the previous videos, which go and check those out if you want a review on the first 5 episodes. There was a little bit of repetition creeping in, and also not much focus on WCW. That's kind of changed with these, but I'll get into that as I approach each episode. So anyway, episode 6 focused on one of my new favourite wrestlers. He's an old wrestler, but he's one of my new favourites in terms of I just got into him, and that was Bret Hart. Having watched the documentary The Hitman, which was quite old now, from quite a few years ago, this was kind of a bit more of an updated look at his career and what's happened since he kind of made up with WWE. There was good focus on his rival with Shawn Michaels, but there wasn't too much focus on his life in general, which I thought was a bit remiss considering the legacy of his family. The Montreal Screwjob got some focus as well in terms of being updated. Again, obviously the Hart documentary was quite old, so there wasn't as much evidence about or as openness about it as there is now. Yeah, and you know, it was just a pretty decent all-round episode. It was when this was, I think, the episode when they started bringing in the effect of the end. In other words, like up until this point, they'd kind of gone through the beginning of the war. So WCW being bought by Ted Turner or whatever, and then the rivalry, and then Nitro. Whereas now they are fast forwarding it to the end of every episode, saying that WWE eventually won, bought WCW and ECW, and that's the way things have been. So, you know, that's something that's changed obviously from the episodes. So that's episode 6. Decent episode, like I said, so catch that if you're a big Bret Hart fan, or if you're watching the series in order. The next episode, number 7, was based on ECW, which was a nice touch really, because obviously they didn't have to include that, with it being solely based on the Monday Night Wars between Nitro and Raw. So this episode was again good. Again good coming from the point of view that I recently watched the Paul Heyman documentary. I haven't seen the ECW documentary yet, so I'll have to watch that. But this was a little okay. It wasn't as, you know, you weren't going to get as much detail as you would have get from watching the Paul Heyman documentary. But in some areas, I found it a little patronising. It was as if, because of the series being WCW versus Raw, you kind of got, or ECW was this little feeder company almost, and I think that was evident from them highlighting the kind of steals that WCW and WWE did from ECW, sorry. And I think it did go through ECW's history and the effect they had on the hardcore landscape and the talent that came through that, and that was effective. But if you want a more detailed and perhaps less rushed look at ECW, then I'd say watch the Heyman documentary or watch the ECW. Don't watch this episode. Oh, well, watch it if like I said, if you're interested in it and you want to get as much information as you can, or perhaps want to continue, you know, watching all the episodes. But if you want the more detail, I'd say go for the documentaries. One thing that was made clear from this episode, though, I think the mistakes that WCW made, which led to WWE becoming all dominant, I think, is that WWE chose the wrestlers they took from ECW a lot better. And I'm not saying that the ones that WCW took were bad wrestlers that they took from ECW. I'm just saying that they probably didn't use them to their strengths, whereas WWE took the likes of the Dudley Boys and made them into, introduced the table matches, etc., and played to their strengths basically, whereas WCW didn't. And I think that was another key point in the demise of WCW. So moving on, the next episode, one I very much enjoyed because it was about one. Perhaps I'm debating whether he is my all-time favorite wrestler at the moment. I've got a list, and if he's not number one, he's very often number two, and that is Stone Cold. So episode 7 is basically about the guy who we now basically use to define the Attitude Era. So this episode was good. Again, I think if you wanted more detail, then you'd probably want to watch the Stone Cold documentary on the network, because that gives more detail about his life and things. It seemed like they could have had more people on this episode. For the effect that Stone Cold had, I was looking for a lot more wrestlers to pipe in with their thoughts on him and his career and his change and what he did to the company, and it wasn't really evident. They didn't have as many people, many celebrities or wrestlers or people behind the scenes giving their opinions. I think maybe this episode probably could have come later on in the line because of the effect he had, and obviously, he was really there from the beginning of the Attitude Era of the Monday Night Wars right until the end, and then when WWE brought them out. So maybe this should have been later on down the line. Good focus on his early career though, as the ringmaster, and also with his time in WCW and ECW. WWE put that in obviously to highlight again WCW's mistake of letting him go. I think for me, it was a little bit of a damp squib because I knew most of the information about Stone Cold anyway, having read of his book and being a big fan. But if you're not an Austin fan, or if you don't know much about him and you're a younger member of the audience and you're watching this series, then it is a good episode, another good episode to watch. And then the episode 9, which is the last one I've watched so far, was one of the better ones actually. I think it's one of my favourites, and that's saying something because it was about cruiserweights, which is not something I'm normally that interested in. Now, I'm not really into the big guys either. I don't really specify. It's just I've never really fallen for kind of a cruiserweight wrestler, so I've never really had that much interest in that division, or had much interest in that division. But what this episode really kind of illustrated to me was the talents of Eddie Guerrero, really, and Chris Jericho when they performed in that division. Obviously, they were two wrestlers that both went on to capture the WWE title and break the mold from that cruiserweight tag. But what was indicative of this episode was just how good they were working as cruiserweights. Dean Malenko stood out again. His matches with Eddie in ECW and then WCW, they stood out. Eddie versus Ray, that was a great match. I would anyone watching this episode, I'm sure, would go and watch that match. A great match. And then you start to see the difference, or the good points versus the bad points of WCW. The good points, is that they were quite innovative with the cruiserweights, obviously taking on the lead from ECW of that kind of talent pool, and then pushing it forward with the cruiserweights. That was very innovative at WCW. But then just the stupidity of letting wrestlers stagnate like Eddie, not giving him the leads that he needed. And the same with Rey Mysterio and Chris Jericho. Losing that talent to WWE was again the big signal change that WCW was on its way out. So you've got two sides of the coin there. You've got the great stuff about WCW in that they were innovative enough to develop this, so that WWE even responded with the light heavyweight championship. But then at the same time, they didn't really capitalize on that, by letting it all go to waste. So it's a very strange look at WCW. The only negative, I suppose, it's not really negative. It's just again WWE towing the line. They did put Benoit in there when they mentioned the Radicals. You could see him, in the audience when he took the swing at when Road Dogg took the swing at him and held that commission. But they did, edit it, and there wasn't much focus on him. But we've come to expect that now. So I suppose it's not really negative. It's just, again, my little gripe that his achievements in the ring have been taken away because of his actions outside the ring. But in general, a really good episode. I really enjoyed it, and one of my favourites. So Can't complain. All these episodes are really good, and like I said, they're all kind of now ending with the whole WWE eventually won the war, and this is how it's led into today. So we're moving forward quickly, and I'm looking forward to kind of continuing on with that and this series, because it is a great series. And like I said, I'm just kind of here to give you guys some thoughts on them, and then you can go and watch them yourselves, or choose not to, depending on what I said. I'm not, saying that you're going to go solely on my opinions, but I'm just trying to give you a bit more information. So that's about it, guys. Thanks for watching. Keep liking, subscribing, and commenting. And want to hear your thoughts. If you watch these episodes, then what do you think? Or if you've watched this video and then watched an episode and disagree or found it helpful, then just let me know. Like I said, I'll be back later on today, maybe tomorrow, with my review of Fastlane. So until then, play it cool, and I'll see you soon. Peace.